Start stream. Hello. It is. Who's this? Oh, I'm doing fine. I've gotten dozens of calls from this number, but nobody ever left a message. And I get so many spam calls, and I have a large YouTube channel, and I get calls from them. And so, unless somebody leaves a message, I'm not going to call back. Yeah, now, can you excuse me because I'm about 30 seconds away from starting a live stream for my YouTube channel. I understand that you want to talk about emergency communications. I do. I have all kinds of sample stuff, but I will need to talk to you later. So it's an hour to an hour and a half. So, okay. We'll see you then. Bye. If you want to call back, you gotta leave a message. Okay, let's see. Do we have audio there? We have audio on the overhead. We have audio there. And we have audio on the screen. Okay, the screen. There we go. Okay, let's go back to normal view. And I see a few. Why is this chat not highlighted? I support generally in more ways, managing moderation close. Welcome to live chat. Okay, here we go. You are live. All right, I'm live. Had a great week last week in Nebraska. It was not too hot. In fact, it was extremely pleasant. We drove 2 days. We stayed overnight at an RV park in Loveland, and then drove the rest of the way to Crawford, and then on to Shadron, which is the next town over, which had a very nice, very laid back RV park. And by staying at non-chain RV parks, the cost was much less, like half what you'd pay at a KOA or something like that. So it was very nice, very nice. Let's see, we've got Michael C. says, I am, oh, here we go again. We've got YouTube saying I'm not sending them enough data. I'm using Starlink again. By the way, I did receive the Starlink Mini. And the way it works is you plug it into the wall, put it out on the ground somewhere where it has a pretty good view of the sky, like through all the trees, and it becomes a wireless router. And so all our devices in the RV, which weren't many, were able to connect with it easily, and we were able to watch TV shows. And the one problem with it that I've heard from people is that there is, on the roaming plan, a 50 gigabyte cap on how much you can download. And I think we can probably go through that pretty easily. Let me make this a little smaller. No, not that. This. Okay. I'm going to make this a little wider. I'm going to go to the screen here and see how wide I can make the screen. think right there. It's about as wide as I can make it. Okay, normal view. Warren Baker, hi Dave, your broadcast is live. Mark Leathers, hey Dave. John Ward, hello Dave. Pete Dayton's channel, Pete Dayton KO4IRD wishes you well. Stormy and hot in South Florida, 93 today. Yes, and I understand that it's getting into hurricane season down there too. John Ward from W3OJ in Laurel, Maryland. I knew a W0OJ. He's passed away recently. I saw him in the Silent Key section. I knew him. Howling Dog Adventures. Greetings from KK7UAW. John Ward, you were missed. Well, thank you. I'm glad there's somebody who misses me. I was in Nebraska. The Tolman family, well, it's bigger than the Tolman family. It's a big, huge family. Gather every year on January 3rd in the Crawford City Park in the pavilion and have lunch, and it's mostly yak. You know, people go talk with people they haven't seen in quite a while. And I'm not directly related to any of them, nor for that matter, I think, is my wife. My wife's sister is married to a Tolman. So since she goes, we go. I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, the extended family is the whole town. I thought Crawford was showing signs of aging, but what was the name of the town we went to? Chadron, the next town over, shows a lot of signs of life. And we stayed in an RV park and just had a good time. The RV worked out perfectly. But the one problem I'm having with the RV is that the freshwater tank, which will hold, I think, 50 gallons, it doesn't leak, but the drain faucet on it doesn't close all the way. And unfortunately, it's a piece of PEX plumbing, and so I know essentially nothing about PEX. So I'm going to have to get some advice so I can isolate the thing from the drain plug with another faucet during the summer, and then in the winter turn that one on and let it drain through the drain plug. That's the theory. I'd like to drive around with 10 gallons or so of water in there, because that means wherever we are, the sink works, the toilet works, all those things requiring water work. I thought it was the tank, so before we left, I actually took the tank out, and there was a little bit of water in the bottom, including a little bit of that pinkish RV stuff that allows, it's the antifreeze. And although it's not poisonous, it's not what I consider to be something nice to drink. So the tank is easy enough to get out, but what I should do with the thing is flush it and put some Clorox in it or something and let it kind of sit and disinfect and so on. And I think we'll get a water filter for under the sink so we can drink the water in there. Okay, let's see. We've got a number of things going on here. We've got, we're up to 39 concurrent viewers. Howling Dog Adventures, greetings from KK7UAW. John Ward says you were missed. Chuck Schreiber, good evening, Dave, and all Augies N5. KVO from the hill country of South Texas. Beautiful evening, breezy and 86. Roz Brown is with us. She's redoing her message. Ralph Leland, hi Dave and everyone, K4TA in Fork Union, Virginia, 84 degrees here. Justin Murphy has a super chat here for $10 and says, Dave, thank you for being everyone's Elmer on the internet. I've learned a ton from you. Well, thank you, Justin. That kind of thing keeps me going because what I put up is not really intended as entertainment per se, but it's it's educational, and I try to answer people's questions and take people's questions seriously. I don't, I try not to indulge in speculation about what's going on here, there, and everywhere, and try to, but I do tend to wonder sometimes. Okay, Warren Baker, hi from WA4BAK in Chattanooga. We were saying you were live during your phone call. Oh, yeah. Um, I did get a phone call. I don't know what the deal is these days, but people seem to expect if they call you, they don't need to leave a message, and you'll look at the list of called numbers and call them back. And I'm going, no, 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 no. If somebody expects a call back, leave a message. Otherwise, it's spam. And I get an awful lot of spam calls. I mean, I'm on the do not call registry and everything like that, but that doesn't really work. And so when somebody calls, there's a little button right here. I can send them straight to voicemail. So, and then there's a sound that comes out of the phone, a little tink, when people, start listening to voicemail and hang up. This will tell me that they've hung up. So, okay, let's see. Thank you very much, Justin. Greatly appreciated. This is the way I earn money for the channel, the way the channel pays for itself, is I get a little bit from the advertising when people view videos. I get some from the super chats. I get some from the super comments here on the live stream. I also have a Patreon page at patreon.com/KE0OG. Also, if you go to dcasler.com/support, it's got a list of all of these, and it also has a link. If you don't want to deal with Patreon, you can deal with PayPal and take out a subscription to my channel. And then, of course, every month, my assistant gathers all of the changes and everything like that and creates a new list of supporters. And we put that at the end of every video. And we do this once a month. So if you like join Patreon on the 1st, it'll be the 1st of the following month where you'll see that there. And I do that just to express my appreciation to you, because I'm trying to provide a useful educational channel. And I do hire an assistant to help with a lot. This new guy is 16-year-old Tegan. He's kind of an IT expert. He's major into his high school band. He's made it very clear he's not going to come work for me during band camp week. But I think we'll get enough done that we need to get done. He does a lot of things for me, and I'm going to turn him more into a research assistant, someone who's got a lot on the ball. And he really knows how to make that computer work very easily. Okay, Roz Brown. Hi, Roz. W0NBG in Lakewood, Colorado. Always happy to see you share your ham radio wisdom with us. Thanks much. You're welcome. Larry in Manila. Good morning from Manila, Philippines. Just saw you online planning to get started in WinLink. Finally got the Wires X running with help from the Magellan groups. I need to do that. I'm going to make a note here, WinLink. I've always heard about WinLink. And Win, L-I-N-K, WinLink. There used to be a program, I think, called WinMore that's been deprecated. Deprecated means that they won't use it anymore. It's like saying, oh, on such and such a day, we won't provide fuel for automobiles. Everybody has to be electric. That would be deprecating all the gasoline engines, whether they work or not. I don't think that's going to happen. In my humble opinion, having owned a hybrid in the past, Prius, twice, it's a great way to go. You get outstanding fuel economy. We regularly got between 45 and 50 miles to the gallon, sometimes a little higher on the highway trips. And of course, it had a battery, so they're making them now to where if you drive it for less than 30 miles, the engine won't even come on and just use the battery. So that's kind of nice, you know, because one of the problems with anything electrical, as we all well know, you pick a handheld to use it and the battery's flat. So, of course, I'm not advocating that we put tiny gasoline generators into our cell phones. That would make it a little hot in our pocket. Okay, Optical Man Jeff, KE0KRO. Hi, David Ologis from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where it is 80 degrees and sunny. Von Ziegel says from Don, N6CD adds $10 to the chat revenue. Very much appreciated. Bill Myers, KA8GIM, good evening, Dave and all loggies. Chris Robinson, evening, Dave. I watch a lot of your vids. I hope you enjoy them and find them useful. Paul CVK, here's our first Australian this evening, VK4 DPC. Hi, Dave and fellow Augies. Greetings from sunny Brisbane. It's getting into the middle of winter down there. Chris Robinson, usually a bit late, he says. Leo, hi, Dave and everyone. Nice to see you all. Leo Gustafson, KK7CLY, checking in from Albany, Oregon. 80s finally, and high 30%. Chris Robinson, evenings from the high desert of Lakeview, Oregon. Anyways, Larry from the Philippines, our wires X is on 43534, which is Philippine link. I've been listening to other videos on the WinLink setup, but my IC718 is not on their list of radios. That's odd because, okay, WinLink is the system. All these things interconnected. You can send emails via WinLink. People can log in via Pactor from out on the seas and so on. It's quite an interesting experiment. And the software that you used to use had to be either Pactor, which is a whole mode and everything. And if you're going to use Pactor 2, 3, or 4, you have to buy the modem, which is like $1,800. Okay, so somebody's ripping somebody off here. Pactor 1 is open source, and back when Pactor was first becoming popular, I did a lot of Pactor, but now you hardly ever hear it on the airwaves. So there's a piece of software that was called WinMore that would do the same thing, but that's been deprecated, meaning they've replaced it with Vara, V-A-R-A. I think they should have called it WinVara or something like that. So we would know that it is a piece of software specifically designed to connect you to WinLink on HF. And I think it may work on VHF as well. Okay, let's see. Evening from the high desert. Yeah, we're really on the high desert here too. Dale Wildman, hi Dave, setting up ham station, working ground bus on wall. Do I strap each device straight to the ground bus to ground, house ground? This is for RF issues. Look at Ask Dave number 8. It will give you an idea of exactly what to do. What I have just behind the back of the desk here is a piece of copper pipe about that big. And all of the different devices in here, I run a ground strap from the device, wrap it around that pipe, put a hose clamp on there. Again, you don't solder ground connectors. They're always crimp, because if there is a sudden flash of a lot of electricity, it can flash boil solder. and will. So a crimped joint may get hot, but it's still there. So I have that, and I have all the things in my shack grounded to that, and then that is grounded to my ground outside down at the ground rod. So it works very well. Okay, let's see. We've got a few more questions. Well, it's 5 after. I guess I should say I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, and welcome to our weekly Thursday evening live stream. Thursday evening in the United States. It's Friday morning for Australia and the Philippines. The purpose of this is to just chat with each other, and if somebody has a question, I'll try to answer it. If I can't answer it here, I'll make a note of it or ask you to make a note of it, and I'll try to answer it in a video. Also, I write the Ask Dave column in QSD, and I use anywhere from 2 to 4 questions in that column too. Now, for a while I had a form on my website where people could ask questions using the form, and a lot of people did, and I'm slowly working off those questions. I'm in 2022 right now, so if your name pops up next to a question, think 2 years ago, because that may be when the question was asked. I pick questions based on whether they can illustrate a more general point, or whether they have some inherent teaching value in them, or something like that, so that I can do this. By the way, I am attending some more Hamfest this year. I was at Dayton. I have not put together my Dayton video yet. I mean, there's nothing exotic around. About 33,000 people meeting all their closest friends. I will say one of the vendors had outstanding root beer floats. And then, I talked to principals from ICOM and Yesu. This time Yesu had a bunch of native English speakers there to help out. I think the last time I was there was 2 years ago. They had a bunch of bigwigs from Japan, none of whom could speak English fluently. So it was hard to have a real discussion with them. Since being an American, I only speak one language, and that's English. Whereas most of the people around the world speak at least 2 or 3 languages. When I was in the Philippines, people spoke their local dialect. As a missionary, we taught in English. And I was there when Marcos declared martial law, and he did it in English because that was the only common language in the country. There's about 54 major dialects in the Philippines. So, okay, ground, do I strap each device straight to the ground bus? That's the bus behind you. That's your station inside. I'll call it your shack, single point ground, and then that runs down to the ground rod. Now, your lightning arresters are on the ground rod too. So your coax cable coming into the house is going to be grounded on both ends. It'll be grounded down outside, and it will be grounded when it goes into a grounded radio, like my HF rig here. Also, I have some switches here, antenna switches. They're Alpha Delta, by the way, 4-way switches. Those are individually grounded, and they in fact have a lightning arrestor in each one of them. And right now my radios are turned to ground, where I just ground the antennas. Whenever there's lightning in the area, I'll do that. So if you live in an area like Tampa, I would recommend completely disconnecting your radio when you're not using it, and only connecting it when you are using it, because that Tampa is the lightning capital of the world. And I've been there, and I can attest to that. Okay, let's see. Kojo, hi David, your video has helped me learn a lot. Keep it up, I will. Leo Gustafson, I reached out to Chris at Buddy Pole, but again, no response yet. Your patience is exemplary. Please understand that the people at Buddy Pole are not very many people there, and they're doing everything. And it's kind of rare that they have the opportunity to talk to a customer, and even more so rare that they can talk on a repeated basis to a customer to kind of work them through something. So I hope that you are able to get what you need. I'd follow it up with an email that says, thanks, what was the name here? Chris, thanks, Chris, for our conversation. Here are the points we discussed, and here are the action items I recall from the meeting. If you have any different understanding of it, let me know. I know I was just talking with somebody. There's a guy at church. He's actually a medical doctor. And he has been asked to look at some emergency response plans for the local area for the church. The church likes to, reach out and touch all its members when there's a disaster like this. And very often LDS churches get used as shelters, and the, what do they call it? The Bishop's Storehouse, there's one in Grand Junction. They store a lot of food. And the primary recipients of that food aid are local shelters that provide food to the indigent and those who just can't afford it, which is getting to be a lot of people, and to the homeless. And they serve them. And the major original purpose, of course, is if there are Mormons in need, the local bishop never gives anybody money. If you're behind in your rent and the bishop's going to pay your rent, he will pay it directly. And I used to be a clerk to a bishop, ward clerk, and I can remember a number of times writing checks out and even sometimes taking the check to somebody to make sure that they knew that the rent was being paid. And when it comes to food, again, in kind, they'll go up to the Bishop's Storehouse, which is basically a huge storehouse, but they have a small grocery store with the basics and, meat, vegetables, and so on, milk, that kind of thing. And these will be distributed as needed. Okay, and there's, it's really good that way. It does a really good job. And I'm proud to have been part of it directly by actually writing those checks and getting them to the right people. A lot of other duties for the clerk. So on the 20th, I will be at the Flagstaff Ham Fest. That's on a Saturday. If you happen to be in the Flagstaff area, do stop by. It sounds like an all-day ham fest. At least there are going to be speakers all day, and I will be one of them. We will be leaving here on the 18th, which unfortunately is next week, so there won't be a live stream next week. Let's see. I'm going to speak at the Chandler, Arizona Amateur Radio Club via Zoom, and I'm going to speak to WX5ARC. They're on Central Time, KI5, so I'm guessing Texas, and I will do that again via Zoom. And then, of course, in September, they're going to have the Albuquerque Ham Fest this year. They're kind of starting over. They lost their slot at the venue because of the COVID thing. In the 4 years they didn't have the Ham Fest, somebody else grabbed the slot. So they're going back to basics. There's a school there that'll provide forums, and in the gym they can do all the vendors and stuff like that. And then there's a local hotel right near there. It's almost at the interchange between I-40 and I-25. I-40? Yeah, I think so. And looking forward to that. If you are in the Albuquerque area, the Hamfest is actually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I will be speaking twice on the 21st. And then in October, we have Pacificon, which is the 18th, 19th, and 20th. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'll be speaking, I think, on the 19th, which is a Saturday. Now, a lot of these Hamfests have multiple tracks. So, and I swear every time I see two presentations I really want to see, and they're both at the same time. So, there you go. So that's, anyway, what the summer brings for Swap Fests. It is high summer here. It is 87 outside today. The high was 90. Now we live at 7,000 feet. 90 is rare. And I certainly have never seen it go over 100. But I have seen it do that in Montrose. And I was in Montrose today and kept wondering if the Jeep air conditioner was actually working, but I did get where I needed to get. Okay, let's see. I gotta go back up just a little bit. Okay, Silvermine 203, good evening from Westport. Good evening to you. He's in Connecticut. Let's Go Amateur Radio says greetings from where I've been operating QRP on the dunes at Topsail Island, North Carolina. Well, your signal's coming in very well here, I assume CW. Justin Roth, hi, I'm going to take my amateur general exam within the next 24 hours. Wish me luck. I absolutely do wish you luck. Curious, what do you know or think of the Metastic LoRa mesh network? I've seen references to it. I don't know where it is. If somebody could send me a link for that, I'd appreciate it. My ARRL address still isn't working after the big disaster, cyber disaster they had there. So send it instead to Ask Dave ARRL, all one word, at gmail.com. And so, Justin, good luck to you for your general. And here's hoping you pass that. Note that your upgrade in privileges is instant, so you can start looking for setting up a general station. Leo Gustafsons, I've been off the air for over 2 months now. Leo, I think you wrote me and told me that you were in the process of moving, so I can understand that. And there get to be more important things when you're dealing with family. Nothing is more important than family. Larry in the Philippines been playing with Thor here, usually around 3 p.m., Thor being the Norse god of thunder. And having been in the Philippines, throughout the Philippines, myself 50 years ago, those thunderstorms haven't changed. They're still there every afternoon. What I used to hate was a morning thunderstorm, because that got everything wet and the humidity just soared to like 100%, and it was just misery. But if they were in the afternoon, they would tend to cool things down a little bit. Chip Weekly, W3BEW, hi Dave and fellow Augies, from the beautiful Great Smoky Mountains of western North Carolina. There's a Bigfoot spotted me yesterday, but his clan wouldn't believe him. Yeah, I can understand that. The Bigfoot guy has been a lot of places. And Bigfoot is the American version of the Scottish Loch Ness Monster. There have been numerous almost sightings and pictures taken from way afar so that when you zoom in on it, it's like 5 pixels. But Bigfoot's our Loch Ness Monster, and it's fun to talk about him. I think when people camp, somebody must put some special shoes on and go walking around so it looks like big giant feet on the ground in the snow. Western North Carolina, I've been in the Smokies about there too, and I agree, it is beautiful. It's a very beautiful country. The Appalachian Mountains are old mountains as opposed to the Rocky Mountain, which are pretty new. And so the Appalachians have been worn down to where they're gentle round things like this, whereas the Rocky Mountains are still jutting up like that. So, Chris Robinson, Dave, we need to talk about the Jackery, yes, and other battery inverters that really are useless in the high demand needs of radio or emergency needs of home use, such as a refrigerator, etc. Depends on the size you get. I've never tested a Jackery, but I have tested several other brands. So you can go look in past videos. What I usually do when I test one of these, the very first thing I do is test if it will run an inductive load. Because a lot of the old so-called sine wave inverters don't. Because even if it's a sine wave inverter, there's another requirement, and that is what power factor can it handle. And that's the out of phaseness between the current and the voltage. So I set it up over here. I've got an electric drill down here, variable speed, and I start that drill to where it's just barely turning over, where it's almost a purely inductive load. And so far, all the ones I've tested can do that. The other thing I do, I've got an 800/1200 watt heater down here that I put on them to test the output. Then I put the output on the oscilloscope, and I'm looking at waveform and waveform issues. A lot of times when you pull it on a slightly inductive load, the waveform kind of goes crazy. But I show that on all of them. So I think I give it a pretty good test. A couple have become favorites of mine. One that is designed to run my CPAP machine will actually do it for 4 nights. I've tried it. I tested it. Another one, that was a, what was that? Blue Eddy. Got another Blue Eddy that I really like because it seems to hold its charge really well. What I have out in the camper right now is a bigger unit that holds a kilowatt hour of electricity. So that's not enough to run the air conditioner. But that is enough. If we had to, we could run the microwave from it. So we could cook. And normally we use that thing because it's got all kinds of slots for this to charge our devices. And it's very handy to have. So, yes, I've reviewed quite a number of them. I think 8 or 10. They range from small to pretty good size. But to get one that would run a refrigerator, say for a day, now you're talking something serious. And the Jackeries and others, everybody's imitating the Jackery. They're not designed for that. They just aren't. Now they've got, if you are going to put a 12 volt DC refrigerator in your RV, it's going to want to run off your batteries when the generator's off. And the only way that will work is if you put several solar panels on the roof of the RV to keep that battery charged. And the more the merrier on that. And then you can run, also with a proper inverter, you can even run the air conditioner. There's a guy, a YouTuber, not just in time, Justin somebody, who makes RVs, I'm sorry, makes videos about his parachute, powered parachute, paramotor, that's what they're called. And he took a school bus and converted it so he could go anywhere. And he put enough solar panels on it that'll even run the air conditioning. And that's nice. And one thing he did that I wish all RV manufacturers would do, he put in a split unit. Now, a split unit is not a window air conditioner, it's a step up. It's got a piece outside on the ground, and then it's got a piece that goes up in your wall up here. I have one. It's right there. You can see it over the window. And I do that because this room tends to get very warm in the afternoon. So I'll just switch that on rather than the whole house air conditioning. And Loretta likes it a whole lot warmer than I do. So I can make this room nice and chilly. And in fact, I turned it off when I came in here because the whole house is running right now that we're in the middle of summer. When we first moved down here in 2003, we used the air conditioner for about 3 days in August, and that was that. Well, temperatures are going up. Okay, let's see. So, where are we? Kojo, I want to come to our first Ham Fest. Where's it going to be? Okay, I lost where we are here. Okay, that was the Jackery. The Jackery is a Chinese brand too. All these others are imitations of the Jackery. And fortunately, they all have about the same features. Almost everyone has a light on it somewhere. Some of the lights are a lot better than others. Some are quite bright and will light a room satisfactorily for an emergency situation. Some are just, in my mind, token, but they do work. Okay. No, those little power boxes have just got lithium iron phosphate batteries in them. They've got an inverter, they've got some control circuitry, they've got a display, and so on. So the actual battery is not the bulk of what's inside. So, VARA rules. Chris Robinson, lots of blackouts happening for folks, and these little power boxes are useless for high capacity needs. No, that's what a generator is for. If you have a, the purpose of the power box or any kind of a battery backup in a big installation such as a house is to get you through the period of time it takes you to start your generator. Now, if you have enough batteries, like these big Tesla batteries, and enough solar panels, you don't care whether the power is up or down or not. So, a friend of mine, Randy Cassingham, who's now off in Europe, his house had quite an array of solar panels, and he powered his refrigerator, freezer, and stuff, the pumps for the in-floor heat, and about half or more of the household loads, so that when there was a power outage, he wouldn't even know it if he was in the living room. So, because they just take over automatically. So, yeah, the blackouts are happening. What you want in the blackout, for short blackout, is light and, a very keeping your phones charged, stuff like that. So, ND3N, I have been checking their video. I asked him for help. Been seeing Vara at times and been doing the beacon, but no chats yet. Yeah, Vara, I'm not sure is designed for chat mode. so much as to store and forward, but I will learn more about it and do something. Okay. Let's see. Chris Robinson, I love Packet and Vara. I use both from here in the desert. I live in a region that seems to have a fair option of both. That's great. Kojo, want to come to our first Ham Fest. Kojo, where is your Ham Fest and when? Justin Roth, at Dayton, there was a display from ICOM for something called the X60. Any idea what it is? Thank you. They had a display of circuit boards there, and they had basically no explanation, and the idea was to guess what it was going to be for. Well, it's going to be some kind of a box. Okay, and I don't know if it's going to be the high-end box that will supersede. Will be ICOM's HF lineup is very kind of limited these days. You've got the 7300, the 705 is the QRP rig, the 7300 is your general purpose rig, the 7610 is your contesting / DX radio. I've used one, it's a magnificent radio. And then there's, let's see, the 705, which is the QRP rig. And then there's the 9700. Anyway, it's a VHF and microwave radio. And so those are your choices, those 4 radios. So I don't know if they're going to expand. They used to have something above the 7610. We'll see if this is it. I mean, it was just a bunch of circuit boards. I've taken my ICOM, taken the covers off, and it's just a bunch of circuit boards plugged in there. So, okay. They're pretty loud at Hamfest, ICOM, yes. Larry in Manila, I have a ground outside my shack and I always throw the switch, but there are times I disconnect the coax and stick outside the window. Most people here don't seem scared of Thor. My experience with the Filipinos, of course, this was 50 years ago, is the Filipinos by and large don't like being out in the rain. And so if it starts to rain, they duck into the nearest shop or whatever. And frankly, I don't blame them. At my age, I don't like the feel of the rain on my head. So that's why I wear a hoodie in the winter. I can just flip it up and not have that. And it's just purely a personal thing. Okay. Chris Robinson, Thor doesn't bother me. He strikes my area very rarely. I have a map here somewhere under here that's going to be in a video about grounding, and I don't know where it is right now, but it's a map of the United States, and it gives you the relative number of lightning strikes, and it has the Tampa Bay area definitely listed as the highest in the United States, and it is quite something. Let's see, Chris, this is Leo talking about Chris at Buddy Pole. Did mention before shipping the spreaders that it's a couple of hours operation to repair and he'd turn them right around. I understand that this was shortly before Dayton Hamfest. Dayton Hamfest, of course, was his first priority. That is his best opportunity for spreading the word. I don't recall seeing them at Hamfest, but then again, I wasn't checking on every vendor to see who was there. I was there to enjoy myself and learn what I could. MFJ was not there, so R&L Electronics got to move into their space, and they've been out in tents for quite a while. I did loop around the swap meet, looped around the swap meet, and last time I was there, I saw lots of TS-120s. This time I didn't see any. I was surprised. Lots of stuff out there, but I didn't bring anything home. So I brought a couple of other things home. I stopped by Alpha Antennas. Alpha Antennas had quite a bit of space. And I had previously reviewed for them an interesting antenna, sits up on a massive tripod and has two, what do you call them, whip antennas coming out at an angle and will form a dipole on HF. And I tested his antenna, and the wind knocked it over and broke the mounting hub. I mean, just snapped it in half. So my assistant, who was then Aiden, and it was a little 3D printed thing, and it had a cover on it, and it had screws holding the cover on. We just took our drill and drilled all the way through the device and put in our own screws that turned the thing into a giant sandwich and made it immensely stronger. And I got a call from Alpha Antennas. They'd seen the review, and they said that they were going to change their manufacturing process to do identically the same thing that we did. A little bit prettier, but they did the same thing we did. He sent me. And so I put it up, and kind of with my back turned, I pushed the antenna over so it would hit the ground, hit the deck, and held up beautifully. So it made for a change there. Okay, Sean, 111 degrees in Sacramento. Yeah, triple ones, there you go. Thanks for all you do, Dave. I appreciate that. Leo Gustafson, be that as it may, I have my Jeep CJ5 to work on to keep me distracted. I had a CJ2A, which, as I understand it, was the first civilian Jeep after the war. You could tell it because the headlights were actually mounted on the front grille rather than recessed. And that's what I learned to drive in. It was a wild experience learning to drive in that thing. I was 14 and a half, and my uncle says, why don't you take the Jeep out for a drive? Well, I'd never driven before. And so after a number of false starts where the clutch came out too quickly, I was able to get it going and had to learn to shift it and use the clutch and all that sort of stuff. And I had my sister, Jeannie, along. And we were driving along up by where the old cabin was. And the next thing I knew, the Jeep was at an angle with 1 foot up on a rock about 2 feet high. Jeep was at an angle. There was perfect silence everywhere. And that is where I learned that you actually do have to watch the road. So we were all okay. We just backed off of it and went on our way. But I learned a very important lesson there. And fortunately, I did it without killing my sister or myself. So yeah, this is a great way to learn to drive. Just here's the keys to the Jeep. Go have fun. For a while, that Jeep was my car when I was at UCLA. Would have been my second year. That was my car. It's the Jeep, and it was so full of problems. The brakes were just absolutely horrible on that thing. It finally went back out to the cabin in the desert, and I got a different car in college, a little tiny Toyota Corona. Oh, it was a dinky little thing. Had an interesting heater. It was a thermostatically controlled heater, and so it would turn on the heat when it got too cold and turn off the heat but leave the fan on when it got too warm. Well, the only problem with that is that you had to use outside air, and the outside air was at about 0 degrees. So you either had a blast furnace or a freezing wind coming out of that thing, and there wasn't any way to find a happy medium in the middle. So anyway, that's my story. Larry said, I knew a CB friend who was a police sheriff. His car had a direct hit on the car. He was lucky to be alive. He got told it was 10,000 volts. I guess the amps passed by. If you're sitting in a seat, there is metal in the seat, but it's usually covered with an insulator. And of course, the tires are insulators. And the wheels are usually plastic, or at least plastic covered these days. So yeah, it does provide some protection. Now, there are people who have been hit by lightning and survived to tell the tale. One story I read about was a guy took it on the top of the head and it went out his ankle. It blew out his ankle. And he lived. Now, he noted that there were some weirdisms in how his brain worked after that. But otherwise, he was perfectly capable of getting around and holding a job and all of that thing like that. I would not want to have that experience. Okay, 111 degrees, wow. Yeah, the Jeep CJ5. When we took the Jeep apart, Roger and I seized the number 4 bearing, the piston, the rod. We seized it to the crankshaft. And oh, that was fun. My dad said, you broke it, you fix it. It took Roger and I a year. We'd go up to the cabin and we took everything apart. We had no idea. You probably could have replaced this by taking the head off, if even that, and the crankcase oil pan off, undoing the bolts and sliding that thing down to where you could get at the rings, or pushing it up and out the top. But no, we took that engine completely apart and we had no idea what we were doing. And it was interesting because we had to get to the we did finally get it to work. I mean, the long story behind it, but I mean, my dad was very wise in telling us to do that, because that's how I learned how internal combustion engines work. I learned a lot of mechanical stuff by doing that. And he paid for the parts. It was less than $100 to fix it. I mean, the slip bearing for the piston rod, the slip bearing for that, a few dollars. And we got that thing in. Of course, we didn't have the crankcase honed or anything like that. We did hone the cylinder. We were going to put in new rings, but they were too big and we didn't know how to deal with that. You're supposed to file them down to exactly fit. But we got the thing up and running, and it continued to run until Dad sold the cabin. Okay, Roswell Chuck. My multiband vertical is on a pole at 30 feet. Could I add a fan dipole under it as additional ground radials when not using the fan dipole? I'm not sure that I would. The problem with the fan dipole is that it is resonant at some of the same frequencies that your multiband vertical is working on. I'm assuming this is one. Under its additional. It's a vertical and you're running tuned radials. If you put that tuned radial in there, the fact that it is also feeding your radio might be a bit of an issue. I would hesitate to do it because I wouldn't want to cause problems with my receiver. That's the thing. Okay, but you can certainly try it. I would try it at very low power first to see if it worked. Optical Man Jeff, Dave, I lost one of my radials, the top of my AV680 from high gain. How much do you think it will affect the bandwidth? And is there a way that I could compensate for the loss? Okay, now I take it you're talking about one of the counterpoise things hanging out, because what we have here is you've got, let's see, I'll make sure I get the right one. Okay, an AV680 is like this. It's usually a top, like a 10-foot pole, and this is the AV680, which only covers a little bit of 80 meters. And you want to put out if it's up in the air. This antenna does not need radials. However, it does have 4 counterpoises. They kind of stick out from the thing. They're tubes that come out at a 90-degree angle, but they droop. Okay, and they're designed to be able to droop. That's not a problem. Now you can order parts for all the MFJ is in the process of closing, but it hasn't yet. The AV680 is a very popular antenna. You can go in and in your instruction book find the part number for that and order it and get just that part. That's one thing MFJ was always good about, but you can get that. I wouldn't substitute something else. It's tuned, but you can get it from MFJ. It's kind of long. The shipping expenses might be high, unless you can find something just the same. Will it work without it? Yes. Although I wouldn't push it, because it's a counterpoise. It's an end-fed half-wave antenna with all kinds of bumps and burbles so that it resonates on a whole bunch of bands, except 60, which it doesn't usually cover, and it only covers a tiny part of 80, like 50 kilohertz. And you can sort of tune that, and like if you want to do 80 meter FT8, you can get down there. 3800 to about 3900 is almost exclusively AM. Your rig, believe it or not, will do AM. All the radios have that mode, usually. Not the little QRP radios, but the ones like the ICOM 7300 has an AM, and it will say 25 watts. Actually, the peak-to-peak on that's 100 watts. It's just the way AM works. But I would recommend that you go ahead and replace that. I don't think it'll affect the bandwidth per se. Now, you say one of the top of my AV680. Let's just look that up over here. MFJ. Okay. AV680. And it's a 9-band vertical antenna. Okay, we can take a look at it here. Okay, are you talking about these radials up at the top? If you're talking about these radials up at the top, which you see right here in this picture, yes, those are important. You want to have those, okay? Because that's part of what the capacitive loading up there that makes the antenna be physically shorter than it is electrically. And these things right here are just quarter wave matching stubs on the thing. And then you've got these down at the bottom. These are not radials, these are counterpoises. When you really look at the definition of a radial or a counterpoise, they sure start to look alike. In fact, my old college dictionary defines radials as a counterpoise. I would go the other way around. A counterpoise is a form of radials, whatever. But you've got both on this antenna. So if it's one of the top ones, I definitely would replace it, yeah. Because it's going to affect the tuning of the whole thing. Try it, see what happens. I mean, it may not affect it very much, but it will affect it some. Okay, let's go back to the other questions. Chris Robinson, yes, Roswell, with some switching, you most certainly can use as a ground plane for your vertical. Yeah, it'd be nice to short it if you're using it just as part of the ground plane, which you can do very easily. Knife switch, little alligator clip, or something like that. Okay, Larry says, tried to do the Class B exam but got turned down. The NTC does not accept online, have to be in person. Class B is 75 questions and coming from general class. Okay, Class B sounds like the old American Advanced. And you live in Manila. I'm surprised you couldn't get to where it's given in person. Interesting. Nathan Daniels, hi, what is the difference? Whoops, I just lost my place here. Nathan Daniels, hi, what is the difference between a dipole made up of two 17-foot telescope whips and an aluminum commercially made or wire, all basically same 10.5 meter length? Well, 17 feet is be 34 feet, which would be at about 10.5 meters length. Okay. I've been challenged on this, but I'll say it again. A dipole is a dipole is a dipole, regardless of how you feed it. It can be center fed, off center fed, or end fed. So, and of course, if it's an element in a Yagi or something, it's parasitically fed. But that's something a little different. What is the difference? They will all work about the same. Now, two 17-foot telescopic whips. So if you're going 10, you're talking about 20-meter antenna. They'll all work. They'll all work. I would go so far as to say make a dipole if you've got some place to put it. Just use that. Larry says, my dog is scared of Thor. Yes, most dogs are, and usually tells me about it. My wife got up at 4 a.m. to move her to a different spot. Joe Tyson said, Blue Eddie is good. Ham Radio Hobo says, I'm at HamCon Zion. I think that's in St. George. I got an invitation for it, too late to plan for it. How is Colorado? Colorado's a great state. Colorado ranges from high desert to high mountains. When we came home, I didn't want to hit the freeways hard like we did when we were going out. And my wife said she didn't like it because the roads were so wavy and bumpy and trashed out. But we went through Wyoming and then dropped down from Rawlins down. We went a little bit further, went down to Craig, which is in Colorado. And then after we went through there, we went through Meeker. And I've never been in Meeker in the early summer. It is lush and green, green, green. Just beautiful. I don't think I've ever seen a spot in Colorado be so beautiful, except in the fall when we're looking at the fall color. And right about now, if you go into the high country, you'll see the high country flowers are out now. The best time to go up to Yankee Boy Basin to see the columbines and stuff is usually the last week in July. Unfortunately, a lot of people know that, but there it is. Chris Robinson, yes, make sure to look for them that are capable of high capacity loads, not something weak and small loads. Larry said, my old girlfriend's dad, when he died, I bought his station. One item was a vibraplex, then it got damaged here from a flood. I cleaned it using white vinegar and now looks new. $225 toy. Yes, I have well, as you can see right there, is a Vibraplex original. Now, if it has been in a flood, I would recommend taking it completely apart and cleaning everything. Otherwise, water will have worked its way down into things and you'll get corrosion in time. And there's a number of procedures on the web for how to do that. That Vibraplex has been around for 100 years. Let's see. Roswell Chuck, thanks Chris Robinson. The 4 radials on the Cushcraft MA5V. MA5V, is that the new one? Are not enough. The fan dipole would be 40, 20, 17, 15, 12, 10 meters. You know, you can make fan dipoles from scratch. I made a video that was a supplemental video to one of my Ask Dave columns. And in it, my assistant and I put together a fan dipole for 40, 20, and 10. And it picked up 15 because of the 40 meter there. And what we did is we didn't make a traditional fan. What we did is we used the 40 meter element as the element that everything hung from. And we took pieces of plastic pipe about this long for the first 2 insulators, and then one about this long for the second 2 insulators, drilled holes through them. So up at the top you had 3 wires, then one ended, 2 wires, then one ended, and then you were out for the full antenna. And it worked like a charm. Dirt cheap, about 120, 130 feet of number 12 THHN 7-strand wire with insulation. We got from Home Depot. I got a whole roll of it. And the plastic pipe was just from a pile I had. And we were able to put that thing together in a day. We got a video of it all. And boy, does that thing get out. Gets out really well. Of course, we now have the tower out there that was made according to the instructions for, and I'm already forgetting his name. That's terrible. He sent instructions for how to make a 30-foot mast out of 20-foot products from Home Depot. And we built it. There's a video about it. And it has got a pulley on it, so I can pull antennas up and down it. Now, I also ran across, from comments and stuff, a 33-foot, very sturdy telescoping mast. When I was at Dayton, one of the flea markets was running a flag on an unsupported mast. It was just the mast. How do you do that without that thing bending? But so I went over to take a look at it, and it was this extensible mast. And so I ordered one using channel funds so that I can review it and show it to you. And it's going to get erected about 100 feet away from this mast. So now when I do 20-meter antenna builds, I've actually got the 20-meter antenna at a half wavelength height, which is wonderful. We can do some real fun things with that, and will. Leo, I like the idea of that Palomar device that automatically disconnects the antenna when the transceiver is switched off. Yes, that is a good idea. Chris Robinson, I have found that buying a high-capacity battery, such as 12-volt DC at 280 amp hours, and the inverter of my choice, it's a better choice and cheaper overall. Otherwise, 24 or 48-volt battery is best. Yeah. What I have, and I've got it here for long-term test, it's underneath here. It's the station battery. It's a Golden, I think the trade name is, came from China, mainland China. It's a 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. And I use a small charger that I got out at Pacificon. And I've written this up. and it's for my long-term test. I'm going to use it about a year. And so I took out the power supply's been disconnected, and now the station runs on directly off the battery. And then I've got a solar panel right the other side of this wall that charges it through the charge controller right there. So it's completely off grid. And the nice thing about the lithium-ion batteries that have the battery management system in them is you can run them till they stop working. And the battery management system will disconnect it before you damage the battery. Now this is good because it's most of the battery's capacity, all 100 amp hours. You can probably get maybe 90 out of there. Whereas in an equivalent lead acid battery rated at 100 amp hours, you can only take down to about half charge. Even the deep discharge ones, when you get beyond half charge, you run into the territory where you're going to damage the battery. So I like the lithium ion for that reason. Plus the voltage is a little higher and the rig likes that a lot. It charges out at 14.6 volts. So if you feed a lithium ion battery that has a battery management system, you feed it a constant 14.6 volts. And that's it. Battery management system takes it from there. And when it's done, it's done. It just disconnects it. So that's a much easier regimen than having to get battery, solar charge controllers that handle the three main phases of the lead acid batteries, which have to be treated with kid gloves to make them last a while. I had some batteries here that I put in about 18 years ago. They were lead acid. They were designed for deep discharge. I babied them. I finally gave them to my assistant and says, take this down to Reclam Metals. And they gave him about 40 bucks for them or something like that. And so I said, you can keep it. And so I've got those out of here. It was 400 amp hours worth of electricity, whereas this is 100 amp hours. So anyway, that's where I am with batteries. I'm doing this long-term test of this Golden Mate battery. Okay, let's see. Larry, Leo, I get nervous disconnecting the coax, especially when I hear the loud nose from Thor. I saw in Ham Nation where a guy in Florida lost nearly all his shack. Oh dear. That's why you go for the lightning arresters, or I'll give it the correct terminology, lightning surge suppressors. Nothing guarantees the output in a direct strike. Larry says, back in Subic Bay when our volcano exploded, we lost power for 40 days because of too much ash, and we ended up abandoning Clark Air Base because it was under like 3 foot of ash. And Subic, I think we abandoned for a while, although I think it's open now. During World War II, the U.S. put concrete airstrips on dozens of islands in the Pacific as part of their island hopping, they hop over some islands. They didn't go for every island. They went up the chain and then just let those remaining on those other islands stew. And we put concrete runways on all those. All those have been closed. And a lot of those islands have been designated nature preserves. That's changing. Those concrete runways are still there. That does not mean they're strong enough to handle a B-52 or something like that, but those go in and out of Guam. But with the Chinese doing their thing over there, we're moving a lot of forces forward very quietly. But you'll see little bits and pieces in the news about it. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. Hello from far west area of Missouri, from Glen Martin, 79 degrees, 74% relative humidity. Kojo, our Hamfest is in Ontario and is at the end of September. Ontario. Which Ontario? There's lots of the Ontario I'm used to is Ontario, California, but there is an Ontario in Canada. At the end of September. Well, we've got this one out in California that's toward the end of September. September is the Albuquerque Hamfest, so which is the 20th, 21st, 22nd. So I don't think I'd be able to make that. It doesn't look like a VU2KOC. Om Prakash, hi from VU2KOC in India. Chris Robinson, Roswell, Chuck, just be sure to switch the fan dipole to ground, and as long as it's close enough under the vertical, it will naturally act as a ground plane. Otherwise, you may connect it as desired. For the radials, Larry Pinatubo did some fun with the power. Saw a church collapse during the storm. One guy had a generator, and every hour he had to clean the filters. Yes, we had the same problem in the Seattle area with Mount St. Helens. All the ash came down over Seattle, and they had to put gigantic air filters. It was the oil-filled style air filter that used to use during World War II. Put giant ones on the emergency vehicles so they could still get around. Because you get that stuff in your engine, you're going to ruin your engine. There are a number of stories of airplanes flying without knowing, flying through a volcanic ash cloud. It will trash the engines. And there's the story of one guy who was down in Indonesia. He had taken off from Jakarta, and it was a mountain down there that exploded in the middle of the night. Nobody bothered to tell the airlines. He flew into it and lost one, then two, then three, then four engines. His 747. And so he turns around in the direction of Jakarta, manages to get a couple of the engines going again. That thing can fly on two engines. I think he got a third and briefly the fourth going again. And when he got into Jakarta, he discovered that his windshield was ground glass. He couldn't see a thing through the windshield. He had to come into Jakarta as though it were a 0-0 instrument landing system approach and come in. And he did. He brought everybody safely back. But it ground down his windows to the point where he couldn't use them. It trashed the engines. You take those engines off and throw them away. And of course, there's a lot of other air ducts on the airplane, like for cabin pressurization and so on, that had to be fixed. Okay, let's see. Pinatubo, yeah, I actually have been into that area. I was stationed as a missionary in Angeles City, which is right near Clark Air Base. And sometimes we would go way up the river and just, you know, to go tracting a little bit in some of the little villages. So all that got wiped out by that gigantic volcano Pinatubo. Let's see. Chris, check it will naturally act as a ground plane if directly under the vertical anyways. Even better if connected up and switched to ground for that purpose. Switch it right at where the two halves of the antenna come together. Larry said, when I was on Guam on the USNS Concord, we worked with the recovery from a super typhoon. The president of the local ham clubs called me there. Vertical antenna fell out of the bolts and landed. I think something got lost coming across the Pacific there. Dwayne, whoops, lost my place. Boy, I'm only halfway through the comments and we're almost out of time. Okay, I know we went through that. Why does my antenna still reach outside North America, even though I dropped it to be NVIS? I will show you why. It is not that unusual an experience. Let me just, if I can grab a Kleenex here. Box is squirrely. Okay, I'm going to keep these two in the WinLink, so remember to look them up. But if you look at the vertical pattern of a low dipole, it will look like this. Okay, you'll have a lobe that's fairly high, and a lobe that's fairly high, okay, and this is, note that the radiation is supposed to go straight up. In fact, if you get it low enough, it'll look like this, the radiation pattern. Okay, but I want you to note, okay, here's the 90 degrees off. Note that there is still some radiation. So the antenna will put up an attenuated signal. And here even it will put up an attenuated signal out here. Of course, most of that goes straight up or at an angle. If you're going to talk to somebody 500 miles away, these signals need to go up at an angle, and they do. But you have some power headed up at a fairly good angle. And when conditions are perfect, that is quite sufficient to complete a QSO on that antenna. And most people who have 80-meter dipoles up are in this situation. About the max height people can get a long 80-meter dipole up is like 20 feet or so. So it's definitely an NVIS antenna. But still you get enough. And then of course you get some ground reflections and so on. So you get a little bit. And remember, in radio, the amount of power that it takes to close a link is highly variable. And when conditions are good, which they are right now, it doesn't take much. I mean, you may have a 100-watt station, so what they're listening to sounds like it's coming from a QRP rig, but you can still carry on. So that's how it works. Okay, we're out of time. I apologize for that. And if you were using phone, and I'm betting you would not be heard nearly as well. Yeah, the FEC gets it done. I was hoping to see the results of shorter skip. Okay, yeah. The ionosphere follows the Harvard law of research. The Harvard law of research is that no matter how carefully you control the conditions of temperature, pressure, and humidity, the organism will do as it dang well pleases. And that's what's happening with the ionosphere. It does great good. Okay, Nova Scotia and Canada already. Refreshing to hear. Yes, I know about the metric. The US tried a little bit to go to metric. The problem is that everything is metric. With regard to Mount St. Helens, there's huge long berms along I-5 near Longview, Washington that appear to be normal landscape, but it's all the ash that covered the freeway following that event. Yes. I live in the high desert with mountains. I get several feet of snow each year, and then extreme dry heat in the summer at a mile high. Yeah, absolutely. And the temperature spreads are going to rise up a little bit. Oh, somebody said, I've been shot 6 times, stabbed, set on fire, rolled cars down the mountainside. 7 kids, married 3 times. that married 3 times would be the hardest to get through. Lord knows I have humor. Oh, yes, I guess. And Chris Goodman has also, at K0BLU, has added $10 to the chat revenue and says thanks for a greater night, Dave. So thanks to all of you. We had a very nice, we didn't get on the air, but we had a very nice session this evening. So I want to say thank you. Good night, and wherever you are, 73.